All right, I think it's time to get started. We're just a couple of minutes after the hour. So yeah, no pressure to have your cameras on for this. I know it's during a lot of y'all's lunchtime, so I'm gonna do some talking in the beginning, and then at the end, we'll have time for Q&A, where you can put your camera on, unmute yourself, or just use the chat, but we'll talk about that in just a second. All right. So first of all, thank you so much for taking the time to be here. I know everyone has a busy day, so it means a lot that you are joining me today for this webinar. So I'm Jasmine Hathaway, and I live in Charlotte, North Carolina with my husband, Luke, and 7-year-old daughter, Alex. You also might hear my cat, Ruby, who likes to make her presence known on my calls. We have a dog as well, so full house over here. Up until I founded Compass Coordinators last year, my career was mostly in marketing, operations, and leadership roles in everything from startups to a Fortune 100 company. However, I've really been through a lot outside of work that shaped who I am today. So in 2012, I married my first husband, Alan, and I was 8 months pregnant when Alan was diagnosed with terminal cancer. So after Alan passed away in 2015, I got a crash course in just how much work is involved after a loved one dies. So the first giant project that landed in my lap was getting a corrected death certificate. Typically, the funeral home gets copies of the death certificate for you. In my case, they got the death certificate, but it had my name wrong. So I spent the next 5 months, so the first 5 months after my husband had passed away, making phone calls to county and state offices to try to understand what needed to be done to get the corrected death certificate I needed in order to even begin to tackle the tasks I was facing. Once I finally got a death certificate that I could use, I had no idea how I was going to close accounts, get utilities switched over to my name, resolve confusing bills on top of working full-time, parenting a toddler, and profoundly grieving. I wanted to be able to hire a professional to make sure nothing fell through the cracks the way I hired a wedding coordinator when I got married. Obviously, not everyone is going to have the same experience that I did, but many people struggle to even understand where to begin after a loved one passes away. So even when they have a to-do list, every little thing can feel incredibly difficult when grieving. I started Compass Coordinators to provide concierge support for people going through difficult life transitions, such as the loss of a loved one or a divorce. So when things get overwhelming, Compass Coordinators can step in and help manage all of the tasks and paperwork so clients have space to grieve, heal, even just breathe. I also recently won first prize in the National Daring to Disrupt contest for the business idea, which is amazing recognition of the need in this space. So before we move on, I need to make it totally clear that I am not an attorney or financial professional, and nothing in this webinar should be construed as legal or financial advice. I'd be happy to put you in touch with some great estate planning attorneys and financial advisors if needed, though. So reach out to me after this if you'd like some recommendations. Okay, so now that you know a little bit about me and what I do, let's talk about what to expect in the next 20 minutes or so that we'll be together. So if you're here, I'm guessing that you have some awareness that you or someone you love will die at some point. So that sounds silly to say, but it's a fact that a lot of people would rather not think about. It doesn't matter if you're young or old, married or single, have kids or not, what I'll cover will be for you. So I've taken what I've learned and distilled it down as simply as possible into 3 things you can do to avoid some of the worst headaches Compass Coordinators helps people deal with after the loss of a loved one. So that's right. So if you do these 3 things, there's a good chance you or your family will have no reason to hire me, which seems strange, but it's true. So obviously no amount of preparation can prevent things like mistakes on death certificates. So I'm here if you need help, and you can also purchase my services for someone else who needs them. But by being here today, you're giving yourself and your family a great gift. So, and after this webinar is over, I'm going to give you a gift for being here. So I'll tell you more about that later. So we'll have time for Q&A at the end. So feel free to put your questions in the chat as we go, or just save them until the end. All right, so at this point, some of you might be thinking, just tell me what the 3 things are already. So this is what we're going to go over. Make a plan, have the conversation, and get organized. That's easy, right? It really doesn't have to be super hard, intimidating, or scary. So let's dive right in. Okay, so first, let's talk about making a plan. So what I'm referring to here is spending some time breaking down some of those worries that you might have had in mind when you signed up for this webinar. What would you do if a family member passed away? Would you know where to find information about their life insurance policy? What about their taxes? Birth certificates? So is it a parent, sibling, or spouse that you're thinking about? If you said all of the above, maybe just choose one to focus on for the purposes of this session. Think about how organized they may or may not be in their daily life. Think about how much they do or don't like to plan ahead. So are they the ones planning vacations for next year, or they don't know what they're going to do this weekend? That might give you some idea of how likely it is that they have important things like a will, financial accounts, or their insurance documents organized. So you're not going to make an end-of-life plan for them. What this step is about is just thinking about the person and some of the things that you might want to talk to them about. We'll go into the conversation in more depth in the next section. And if you're here because you're interested in learning more about how to prepare for your loved ones in case something were to happen to you, that's great too. So in that case, you have the power to make a really solid plan. So you can take steps like meeting with an estate attorney and a financial advisor to get your will and accounts taken care of, organize your information, and then share it with your family. It makes things a lot easier when you're in control. Okay, so you might recognize this gorgeous bird here on the slide as an ostrich. And you also might know that ostriches are famous for sticking their heads in the sand. Now, I want you to take a good look at this picture. Does this look like anybody you know? I'm looking at it and I'm pretty sure that my mom has given me that exact same look before. So a lot of the times we put our heads in the sand when asked to think about topics like end-of-life planning. So sometimes it's us that's doing the avoiding, but it's also smart to expect some amount of awkwardness with your loved ones. Our culture can be surprisingly superstitious, right? We think that talking about something is going to make it happen. Obviously, that's not true. But when I did a quick poll on Instagram, 89% of respondents had no idea where their parents' important documents were. So even if our loved ones are organized, we often don't talk to them about end-of-life planning. That's not a super scientific study, so take it with a grain of salt, but there are lots of other more rigorous studies that have shown similar things. So now I'm going to ask you to think about your person again, the one you chose to focus on in the last slide. So think about what in particular worries you the most. So maybe it's that you think they don't have a will, or like you know they don't have a will, and they have kids, or a house, or a business, or 7 different 401k accounts from prior jobs. Not calling anyone out here, just saying those would all be big red flags that there's a potential headache, sometimes called probate, in your future. So if you have a few different topics in mind, there are 2 considerations I want you to make when prioritizing. So the first one is, how important is it? And the second is, how hard is it going to be to talk to them about it? So you might find that the conversations are a little bit easier when you start with something more accessible, maybe like asking how they keep track of their passwords. But you know them best, so the important part is just giving it some thought before diving in. Okay, so now that you have your plan, it's time to have the conversation. I actually put an S on the end there because it's unlikely that you'll be able to cover everything in one conversation and be done. Unless there's some kind of pressing deadline, you don't need to talk about everything all in one sitting. Expect to spread it out over weeks and months. So I do highly recommend documenting the conversation, especially if you're discussing specifics like important contacts, locations of important information, and in particular, if you have siblings or other family members who will want to know about what was discussed. And if taking notes is too awkward, you can always use your phone to record either audio or a video of your conversation. Okay, so finally, the last of the 3 simple things you can do now is to get organized. So if you've documented your conversations, this refers to putting that information in a place that is secure, but easily accessed by the people who would need it. So this will also help you keep track of what topics have been addressed and which things you still need to take care of. Your conversations may lead to some additional work, like realizing that you need to do some research on password managers, making appointments to get a will from 1986 updated, or tracking down military service records. You want to keep track of those things too. So the last part of getting organized is addressing your physical documents and your digital estate. Okay, so I'm just going to pause right here for a moment and explain that estate is a word that gets thrown around a lot in end of life planning conversations. When I first heard it after my husband passed away, I thought that referred to like a sprawling mansion in France, and that is not the case. Everyone has some kind of estate if they have any kind of property, any kind of like valuables. So your digital estate would be like all of the stuff that you own online, you know, whether it's your email account or websites, any of that stuff would be your digital estate, right? So let's talk about physical document organization first. So things that don't count as physical document organization would be like a stack of bills crammed into a desk drawer. So what about birth certificates hidden in the family Bible? Or file cabinets containing every piece of mail you've ever gotten. I worked for a lady who did that. It's a true story. On this slide, I have a picture of one of my physical document organizers. So this is just an example. You obviously don't have to get the same thing, but if you like it, I got it at Target. So it's pretty easy to find something like this. So you might be able to see on the tabs there, it's got some greatest hits of important documents, wills, social security cards, passports, birth certificates, my marriage certificate in one tabbed folder, so it all stays together in its secure, undisclosed location. But for many of us, we also have a huge number of online accounts. So how would you access your loved one's email, document storage, and like photos? In many cases, unless you have their password, the answer is you just wouldn't. You wouldn't be able to get access to those things, especially if they have Apple products, very strict guidelines on those. So that's why I highly recommend using a password manager. I've mentioned that a couple of times, but if you're unfamiliar, there's a bunch of options out there. 3 examples would be like Keeper, Log Me Once, LastPass, that's the one that I use. So those tools can help you keep your passwords organized and secure. And many also have a feature where they allow emergency access to specific people that you choose. So there really are a ton of options, and some of them are free and they're really good too. So I recommend checking out some reviews and deciding which one is best for you. If you just Google password manager, I think it's like a PC Mag review article that comes up. It's pretty helpful. Okay, so is everybody still with me? So we made it through my big 3 tips. So make a plan, have the conversations, and get organized, right? So here's some bonus content for you. So tools you can use. So this slide is a relatively new category. online platforms for end-of-life planning. These are the three biggest in that space: Cake, Everplans, and Lantern. So these are not a substitute for working with an attorney, but they can be helpful if you want sort of like a guided checklist to go through. I believe Cake is free, and the other two have an annual fee to store your information. If you're more of a book person, these are the two that I recommend. Get It Together. That's a book by Nolo, which is known for its do-it-yourself legal guides. It's good, but pretty dry. I mean, it's basically a reference book. And the other one, In Case You Get Hit by a Bus, that's written by the founders of Everplans. It's kind of funny, like a lot of the blog posts on the Everplans website, and it includes some personal stories from different people, so you understand why all the different steps are important, which I liked. If you buy it, it also comes with a free year of Everplans if that's something that you're interested in. And then the final tool you can use is the conversation guide from Compass Coordinators. So this is the free gift that I'll be sending you for attending this webinar. It's something you can use to facilitate the conversations with your loved ones and keep track of what you've talked about. You can sort of use it like a cover page in a binder or a folder, and include your important documents behind it. It's pretty small here, but you'll get the full PDF version afterwards. And that's it. Thank you so much for being here today. I feel like ostriches and people are a lot happier with their heads out of the sand, don't you? So this one looks a lot happier than the first one that I showed. So I hope you enjoyed it. If you don't already, please follow us on social media. It's Compass Coordinators on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And now, if you'd like to unmute yourself to ask a question, please go ahead while I'm pulling up the chat. Awesome. I'm glad it was helpful, Wayne.
I have a question.
Right, any other? Oh, Dee, go ahead.
So my grandmother is, she's in her late 70s, and for like the past 15 years, I've been her primary, I don't say her caregiver because she lives on her own, but I handle her estate. I handle her bills, I handle everything. And I've gotten her to move to North Carolina, and we've talked about her end of life plans. And one of the things, like she has a for her life insurance and stuff. I'm her, I guess the beneficiary or what have you.
Okay.
For her, like her bank accounts and everything. I'm the only one who has the login, but I'm not on her bank accounts. So we talked about doing a power of attorney, so that should the time come where she is no longer capable to make decisions for herself, that I could do it for her. Would you suggest that versus a will, or would you suggest both? She doesn't own any property. She doesn't have any assets except for just her, her life insurance, which that's already taken care of, and her bank accounts. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good question. And again, just want to make it clear, not an attorney, but
no, I understand.
I just need to make sure that that's super clear.
Oh,
but
yeah.
I would for sure recommend a will in addition, just to make sure that you have that document kind of stating what her wishes are. So having a will isn't like a guarantee that you'll be able to avoid lots of these headaches and probate and things, but it is going to help a lot. It's worth it. She can even include funeral wishes, things like that she wants, just to make sure that it's very clear and it follows exactly what she wants rather than what the law or the state is going to decide for her.
Okay. And like a simple way to do a will, would it be like if we were to just like have a conversation and I videotape her and just email it to myself?
So
it's kind of time stamped.
So the two ways, as far as I understand, the two ways that the state of North Carolina, since you mentioned that's where you are, the two kind of legal ways is if you go through an attorney and get it notarized, or if it's a handwritten will by your grandma.
Okay. Okay. And a will, I mean, I guess a will, all it is your wishes. That's all.
Yep.
It's basically all it is, your wishes. But it has no legal like guarantee of anything.
What do you mean by that?
Like if your will is, I guess it's kind of off topic, but like, let's say you're married, and you pass away before your spouse. And in your will, you say, I want to leave, all my high-end jewelry to, my niece. That's fine. Those are your wishes, but your husband is still alive. He can say no, like you're in North Carolina, is shared property. He can say no. Like your will is just your wishes, if I'm correct, right?
Yeah, so I don't feel comfortable answering that because that gets into kind of the like who wins in a legal battle, but the will is the best chance of having your wishes followed for sure.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for your questions.
Hey, Jasmine.
Hey.
How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Good, good. I wanted to ask you with your business. So I'm a financial advisor, and I talk to my clients about this kind of stuff in the very first meeting. Sometimes even I talk more about this than what I actually can do for them.
Oh, good.
It's important to me because I've experienced both sides. Losing a parent without anything organized, and then losing my father-in-law with everything organized. So I'm very aware of it, and I try to practice everything you just mentioned with my family. And it's funny how you're always missing something, right? There's always something else you can do a better job at. So my question was, with your service, when somebody passes away, can you come in and try to figure out the death certificate, changing the accounts, names, and all of that? Is that part of what you do too?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So my services are focused after a loss. A lot of times the situation is more complicated than people realized, right? Mm-hmm. So especially if they haven't done this planning, it's really overwhelming. So I'm going in and helping them make a plan for addressing all of those accounts. And even in some cases, making those phone calls, drafting the letters for them. So it kind of lifts the burden off of the grieving family.
Okay, sounds good. And then you charge a fee for your service. Is that how it works?
That's correct. Yep. Okay. I charge on a project basis. So there's no like surprise billing down the line. I'm quoting up front and then sticking to that price.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, thanks.
Hey, Jasmine.
Hey, Rukia.
Hey, I have a question. So what would be the best way, or how would be the best way for us to convince our family and friends that your services are valuable and that they would need someone like you?
That's a great question. So, I mean, the first thing that I'll just say is that you can't force someone to accept help, right? Being open to help and willing to accept it is a sign of strength, in my opinion. So one of the best things that you can do is just talk to them about what's going on. And if they're open and willing to talk about how much of a struggle it is to go through and, make these phone calls, or, you hear that they're putting stuff off, or it's keeping them from moving on because they aren't willing to kind of face the state of their parents' house or whatever the situation is, that's when it would be a great time to talk about Compass coordinators as being a resource. Really, one of the biggest kind of challenges that I have right now is just making sure that people know that this service exists. So it doesn't have to be a kind of pushy conversation. It's just like, hey, I don't know if you're aware, but there are people who are in this space who can provide professional help. Maybe it would be good to have sort of like a neutral third party come in and help navigate some of the tasks that are on your plate right now. Hopefully that's helpful.
It is. And I have a follow-up question. When would be the good time that we can incorporate Compass coordinators?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, it really depends on when people are aware of their need, right? Of how much they're facing. So if that happens, immediately after someone's passed or even slightly before, I'm happy to get plugged in early on and help kind of assess the situation. Or it could be that, they've gotten started and they're starting to go through a couple of tasks and then they've hit a roadblock. So there's something strange that's happening. There's something that's like overwhelming to them. Like one of my favorites is Chase Bank putting a $2 billion hold on someone's account, right? The widow sees that and she's like, I can't deal with this. It's too much. So that would be a time when I could get plugged in as well and just kind of focus on the thing that's most stressful for them.
Perfect. Thank you.
Great. All right, y'all. We're at the end of our 30 minutes, I believe. So I think I'm going to wrap it up here. But again, thank you so much for attending. I hope it was helpful. Please reach out to me after this if you have any questions, and keep a lookout for that email with the conversation guide. Have a great day.